With Sonnet 4.5, Anthropic also updated Claude Code to version 2.0. This is a complete rewrite and has some pretty amazing new features. For example, now you have the ability to access previous checkpoints. You can look at your current usage. You can track your current context window and can search through all the previous prompts. Along with the new VS Code extension that has some really powerful features baked in. And later in the video, I'll show you a tool that can help you find security vulnerabilities in your code base. So we're going to look at all of these new features, and also I'll show you how to think about using Sonnet 4.5 with this new version of Claude Code. Okay, so first let's look at the changelog for version 2.0. There is a new native VS Code extension that we're going to look at. It's a complete rewrite from the ground up. Now you can also check different checkpoints and start the conversation from a previous checkpoint, very similar to tracking commit history, and you don't have to do that manually anymore. Also, they added usage to see your plan limits both on Claude Code as well as on Claude.ai. You can toggle thinking modes. This is extremely powerful because Sonnet 4.5 can be very effective for complex tasks if you enable thinking. And we're going to look at some of these other features as well. First, let's have a quick look at the VS Code extension, and then later I'll show you the CLI, which I think has the most interesting features. So on VS Code extensions, if you look for Claude Code for VS Code, you can install it. You'll have to log in using your Claude Code account or Cloud account. Now, here's what it looks like. Very similar to any other agentic coding IDE. You can interact with your files. Now, the interesting thing is that it has almost all of the commands that are available within Claude Code through this visual interface, but not all of them. There are some very interesting ones missing, at least when I'm testing this. So you can start a new conversation, resume previous conversations, mention a file, attach a file. This is basically bringing things to the context window. You can connect to multiple different MCPs. There is this new /context, which visualize the current context usage, and a couple of other commands in there. Here, I have been playing around with this code extension. Now, if we use this new context command, this will basically tell us how much context the current session is using. For example, about 40% of the tokens that are available are being used. And within here, we have about 3,000 tokens, which belongs to a system prompt. System tools are about 12,000 tokens, or almost 6%, right? And we have about 76,000 tokens that are free to use, right? So really useful. This is something new that they have added. Also, I think you can look at the models that are available. So by default, now it uses Sonnet 4.5. You can switch to 4.1, but based on the benchmarks, I think it does not make sense to use Opus 4.1 for normal coding. Now, there are some other interesting commands missing. So for example, usage is one of them. And if we go to cost, I think it's going to not show me the cost because I am on the Cloud Max subscription. Okay, so this was a quick overview. You can bring in files into the context of Claude. For example, if you open a file like package.json, you can actually see that it's using that file as a context, right? This is pretty neat. It's not available within Codex, I think. So Claude Code has a much better integration with VS Code. For example, I selected a part of the file and it only brings that into the context, right? So there are some really neat integrations, but let me show you the real power that is within the Claude Code CLI version. Okay, so for my CLI, I usually use Warp, which is pretty awesome. Now we're going to start Claude Code. Now, when the new version of Claude Code starts, you're going to see a very different icon now. They have changed it, and actually it went from 2.0.0 to 2.0.1, right? So they are actively building it. I'm currently within a directory or repo called localgpt. This is one of my open source projects. Now, if we type /command, you're going to see a lot more options now. And not all of these things are available within VS Code. So I'm going to show you some of the interesting ones. But let's first look at /model. So by default, again, we're using Sonnet 4.5. That's the recommended one. Also, by default, the thinking is off, but if you press tab, it will turn the thinking on. And I'll highly recommend to use the thinking mode for complex tasks, because this seems to be really good in the thinking mode. Okay, to show you some of the other features, I have another session that is currently running. So first, let's look at the context. Again, this is what we saw before. Right now, we're running an MCP server with a number of different tools. This is the MCP server that we're going to look at later in the video, because this will help you run security checks on your code base, which is pretty neat. And Snyk is also the kind sponsor of this video. More on them later in the video. But you can actually see that I'm using about 92,000 tokens, which is around 46%. And this is the distribution for this current session. Now they introduce /usage. So this actually shows you the current rate limits, right? So right now I'm using only 2%. The session will reset. So my rate limits will reset at around 3 a.m. It's pretty late at the time of recording. For next couple of features, I'm going to be using another session that I'm currently working on. It's actually a transcription app, which I'm going to demo you later in the video. So the first one is Control R. This lets you search all the previous conversations that you had. For example, if you're looking for a specific prompt, let's say if I type hotkeys, this is one of the previous prompt that I provided. Now, a very similar to this is this new /rewind command. This is extremely helpful because it gives you the ability to go back to a previous checkpoint, which is going to be extremely helpful. So for example, if I want to go here, okay, so then it asks me whether I want to restore conversation or never mind, right? So if I click restore conversation, basically it's going to take everything back to that checkpoint. Very similar to tracking commit history. I think Cursor also has a similar feature where you can revert back to a specific checkpoint, but now Claude Code also added this capability, which is pretty awesome. Okay, another thing that we can look at is /MCP. So this gives you the ability to use different MCP servers that you can use to interact with different tools that are available through those MCP servers. In this video, I want to show you a specific MCP server because it gives you the ability to check for security vulnerabilities within your code base. And in the process, you will also learn how to connect a locally running MCP server with Claude Code. And this is Snyk, who are also the kind sponsors of today's video. So Snyk lets you scan your code for different types of security vulnerabilities. So let me first show you how to set this up, and then I'll show you some more Claude features based on the output of this server. So the very first thing that we'll need to do is to install the Snyk CLI. I have already installed this on my local machine, so I don't have to do that again. I'm currently running this on Mac OS. The link to the instruction is going to be in the video description. Then we will have to authenticate it. So you will need to sign up for an account and give this access to your IDE. So next we need to start the MCP server. For this, we're going to be using Snyk mcp-t sse, and this is going to trigger the MCP server. Okay, so if you go to Claude and let's say if you type MCP, currently there are no MCP servers configured or connected. So let's exit this. Okay, in order to connect that MCP server, so I'm using this command, Claude mcp add --transport sse. Then we provide a name, and here is the actual base URL, which will basically connect that MCP server to Claude. So now if you type Claude and we go in and we look at MCP, we should actually see that MCP server. Okay, so this seems to be working fine now. Now let's see how we're going to use this, but you can also look at the available tools. So here are all the different tools that are available. There are a total of 13 tools. I think it's already authenticated, so we don't need to do that. But let me show you a quick example of how you can use this. Please tell me if there are any vulnerabilities found in my open source dependencies for this project. Okay, so that was a quick transcription. I'm happy with it. Okay, so now Claude Code is going to look at all the available tools that it has, and hopefully it will use the Snyk MCP server. Okay, so here's the final report. It seems like it found 61 security vulnerabilities across open source dependencies. Some of them are critical, high, medium, right? So it's extremely helpful, right? And it's looking at different packages that I'm using and highlighting which of the different security vulnerabilities that are present. Now, let's say I want to fix all these security vulnerabilities. In order to do that, what I personally do is I'll first go to plan mode. So for that, you press Shift plus Tab twice. So you are going to see plan mode. And now you can tell Claude to create a plan to address all of these different security vulnerabilities. Can you analyze all these security vulnerabilities and then come up with a plan in order to mitigate these? Okay, so I'm happy with this. We're going to send this in. So now Claude is going to use its plan mode to come up with a detailed plan. Once the plan is approved, then we can go and start implementing it. Now for this one, it basically is updating the versions. So I'm going to just accept this. But if you're working with Claude Code, I highly recommend for every feature, go to the plan mode, create a plan, review the plan with Claude Code, and implement individual features rather than trying to implement the whole thing in a single pass and single go. Okay, so this was a quick summary of all the new features that Anthropic has added to Claude Code 2.0. Let me know what you think about it and what do you think how it's going to compare with Codex. Also, do check out Snyk. You can get started with it for free. Details are going to be in the video description. Anyways, I hope you found this video useful. Thanks for watching, and as always, see you in the next one.